I'm just making an announcement on Facebook that I'm live. Get some music going. Where is the music? It has been a while since I've done this. Alright. Hopefully the sound is working. I checked it out beforehand. I had messed with some settings. The last time I was streaming, which was D&D, I tried to do something fancy and set up channels so I could record the audio from the other players and adjust it accordingly for YouTube. Not only did that not work, it worked so badly that they didn't even appear on stream, like vocally, and no one told me, and that was weird. But yeah, I fixed that. Alright, let me adjust some of my things here. Alright. Just about there. Just about. Alright. So, a lot of things have happened in the last year, and there's reasons why I stopped streaming on a consistent basis. Had a family death. It was a little hard dealing with some of the stuff from that. But I also suffer from depression, so that flared up, and it was a whole ball of stroll downhill. But now I'm back, and I was on Octavian's stream this last week. They're doing a subathon, and I sat in for them for some time so they could go to the bathroom or take a quick nap or take a shower or something like that. And so I got back into streaming, and it was really fun, and so I figured it's time to just jump back in and do my thing. Probably should have done a stream. So what I like to do, and what I'm going to be doing every Tuesday at 11 Pacific Standard Time, we'll be getting back to my writing, which has also fallen through the cracks this last year. So this story I have not actually worked on since the last time I was streaming, because I had been doing a series of writing streams. So each time I would stream, I'd only work on a specific project, and that project would be done all online, so I could upload the VODs, and then the VODs could be watched if you wanted to get behind the scenes footage of the process. And then after I finished the story, I published it. I'm actually in the process of recording the story and putting it on YouTube so people can just listen to it for free. I put up the first half actually last week, and hopefully I'll get the second half put up next couple weeks, I hope. And I've been doing other projects. I'm working on a podcast for Star Trek called High Trek, where we get high, watch Star Trek, and talk about it with my friend Riley, who has actually never seen Star Trek. So that'll be released, and I've been working on that. But let's go ahead and get into the story. So this is an urban fantasy story. It's called the Presage. This has characters from my last story, short story that I wrote and published. Christopher, and it has Draven. Man, I'm almost forgetting names. It's terrible. So Christopher and Draven and Philip, although he's not called Philip in the story because it's a different time. Hello, Grumpiest Gus. Thank you for the lurk. I don't have a lurk command. I should get one. They're vampires. Chris is a newer vampire. He was created in the 60s. This is set in 1966. And he's basically learning the ropes of the world that he has been introduced into. So let's go ahead and get started. The process is pretty simple. I'm just going to read the story out loud, and I'm going to stop when I need to fix something, and then continue on. I got about 9 pages of this. Then if there's still time, I will work on an outline for the rest of the story, and we'll just talk. If you want to say anything in chat, please feel free to interrupt. I do glance over a chat every paragraph or so, and I don't mind interrupting the talk. Alright, so the Presage. April 7th, 1966, Connecticut, 3:12 a.m. Chris was slowly moving up the staircase with his side up against the wall. The house was dark. Despite it being night, there was still light bleeding through the curtains from the starlights outside. The light was amplified by the vampire power in his eyes. This gave him more than enough light to see. He was clothed in black pants with a matching shirt. He had a black armored tactical vest on to help him avoid extra damage. I'm not sure I really need to explain that it helps him take extra damage. Let me think about this for a second. He had a black armored tactical vest on to help him avoid taking extra damage. I do want to change how that is written, but I'm not going to do that right now. I will be going over the story several times, but I want to just move on and not necessarily workshop on sentences unless they're really bad. There was a black Glock pistol in a holster on his side. In his hand, he was carrying a dirk with a slightly wider than average blade. It had a simple black grip and a sharp, clean-looking blade. I used blade twice in a row. I don't like that. Oh my goodness. What is another word for blade that makes sense here? Synonym for a blade. Knife blade. Had a slightly wider than average blade. It had a simple black grip and a sharp, clean, and it looked sharp and well clean. In his right ear, he had a black communications device. You're taking your sweet time. You're going to be late at the pace you're going. Christopher stopped moving as he heard Draven talking to him from the communications piece. He spoke under his voice through the transmitter. I'm moving slowly because you said any noise could wake him. Now let me work. He began to move up the stairs to the next floor. Yes, but you're moving slow, even for a human. Learn to walk quieter at a faster speed. Chris slightly grunted in response as he walked down the hallway. They had procured the building plans a few days ago. Then Chris scouted out the house while the target was away. The next door was the bathroom. It was slightly open, no lights were on. He glanced in as he passed just in case someone was in there. The target was supposed to be alone in the house, but Chris wanted to be certain. He moved past the bathroom to the next door, which was closed. Christopher knew the target was asleep in that room. Draven had eyes on him from the outside. Chris moved past the door and checked the next 2 rooms. One was an office. It had a few bookcases, a desk, and a computer. The other was an empty room. It had a dresser and a bed, but no decor. Chris moved back to the occupied bedroom's door. He gripped the doorknob with his left hand and gently turned it, pushing open the door. He was happy that there was no squeak at the door as the door slowly opened. I don't think I need to say door again. He was happy that there was no squeak and it slowly opened. When there was just enough space to squeeze through, Chris went into the room. He surveyed the room before moving further in. There was a dresser, but unlike the other bedroom, this one had decor. A few pictures were hung up on the wall and were sitting on the dresser. There were also dirty clothes littered around the room and a laundry basket full of clothes in the corner. The target was sleeping in the bed. His blankets were thrown off to one side, but he still had the sheet on top of him. He was also wearing a gray nightshirt. Chris moved silently over to the bed and looked down at the target. He was sleeping so peacefully. Chris raised up the dirk. I'm not sure I need to say up, raised up. Chris raised the dirk, preparing to pierce the target's heart. He quickly brought it down, but was stopped as the man's eyes opened wide, catching... He quickly brought it down, but was stopped as the man's eyes opened wide, catching Chris's arm holding the dirk right before it went into his chest. That eye should not be there in that fashion. It should be after. He quickly brought it down, but was stopped. Stopped as catching Chris's arms. As the man's eyes opened wide and he caught. Yeah. Usually I like to remove words rather than add them, but let's see how this sounds. Chris raised the dirk, preparing to pierce the target's heart. He quickly brought the blade down, but was stopped as the man's eyes opened wide and he caught Chris's arm that was holding the dirk right before it went into his chest. Chris brought his left hand to bear and tried to punch the target in the head, but his arm was caught by the target. They locked eyes. I don't like saying target twice like that. Chris brought his hand to bear and tried to punch the man. Chris brought his left hand to bear and tried to punch the man in the head, but his arm was caught by the target. They locked eyes. The man in the bed smiled as he was looking up. He took a quick whiff of the air. A vampire, huh? I was wondering when they would send someone. Chris struggled to get his hands free. He knew the target was going to be strong, but he didn't expect him to be this strong. He'd only encountered vampires with a strength like this. He wasn't used to his strength He wasn't used to having his strength matched by non-vampires. He grunted as he used all his strength to pull his arms free, but to no avail. I don't think so, little vampire. It won't be that easy. He pulled Chris closer and then shoved him back, sending him flying against the wall. He jumped out of the bed and stood on the floor, readying for Chris's next move. Chris hit the wall with a thud, and the dagger went flying out of his hands. He stood up and collected his thoughts as he saw his target jump out of bed. He rushed over to him and punched him in the stomach, following up with a shot to his head. The target grunted as Chris's fist went into his stomach. He bent slightly as the impact left him without air, but he managed to lean back and move his head. The fist glanced off to the side of his face. In response, he grabbed Chris and flung him against the wall. He hit a picture, breaking the glass and sending it falling to the floor. The target growled, "Have it your way." Then all at once, the hair on his skin began to grow and became thicker, like fur. It seemed like his very bones grew as he became taller, and his muscles became enlarged, filling out his frame. The shirt ripped and hung in tatters, and his boxers were stretched to their limit. They seemed at the breaking point. His arms were like furry barrels, and the nails on his hands grew and hardened, becoming claws. His face morphed, his nose and mouth stretching and becoming bear-like, with razor-sharp teeth. Chris looked on in awe. He had heard about were-creatures before, but he had never seen one transform. He knew it might happen on this mission, but he had hoped to end it before the fight even started. For the first time in many years, he felt a tinge of fear. He went for his gun. He pulled it out of his holster and pointed at the werebear before he could pull the trigger. He He pulled it out of the holster and pointed it at the werebear. Comma. But before he pulled the trigger, he heard Draven over the comlink. No guns, keep it quiet. If you can't handle it, I'll do it. Chris put his gun away as he stood up, saying, "No, I can do this," and looked for the dagger. It was lying near the feet of the werebear. It was the only other way to kill him for good. It was a silver dagger after all. He needed to get that dagger and pierce the heart of the target as quickly as he could. Chris moved at a blinding speed, charging shoulder first into the werebear. This time the werebear was sent flying into the wall. The wall indented, cracking on impact, but he landed on his feet. He moved back towards Chris, who had just picked up the silver dirk. The werebear swiped, but Chris moved out of the way. He made his own attempt at slashing the creature, but got caught by one of the claws before he could get close. He made his own attempt at slashing the creature, but got caught by one of the claws before he could get close enough. The claw raked across his chest, but thankfully his body armor stopped most of the damage. There was still a moment of pain as the claws scraped against the flesh. He looked down and saw that the claws had gone right through the metal. He was thankful he had some armor on, or his guts may very well have spilled onto the ground. Chris tried again, but this time the target caught his hand, and the claws digging into his wrist. Chris tried again, but this time the target caught his hand. The claws dug into his wrist. His grip diminished as the claws went deeper, cutting the tendons. Chris did everything he could to stop himself from making any noise as he endured the pain. With a grunt, Chris pulled back, managing to pull himself free, but his hand was mangled. Draven spoke over the comlink. "What are you doing? We talked about this. Use your strengths. You're too young. He will outmatch you on strength. Use your speed." Chris quickly took stock of the situation. He had lost the dirk, which was laying at the feet of his target. His right hand was mangled and useless. It would need time to heal, and he couldn't use his gun. Facing the target wasn't working. He changed plans. As powerful as the werebear was, he still needed to breathe, right? Chris shot across the room, going wide and jumping over the bed to get behind the werebear. He jumped up on the werebear's back, using his good arm to go around his neck, choking him, all before the target knew what was happening. The werebear tried to reach behind him to grab Chris, but the arms wouldn't reach. His muscles were too big. Chris used his weight to pull back against his neck even harder. It was working. It was harder for the target to breathe. He was flailing, trying to get Chris off him. The target was gasping for air, but even then he was able to calm himself and stop struggling. He then began to twist, throwing Chris from side to side. Chris used all his strength in a desperate attempt to hang on. The bear continued twisting and was able to catch Chris's leg. He used it to pull Chris off his neck, allowing him to breathe once again. Chris was now dangling upside down in front of the werebear, his claws deep in his leg. It was in front of the werebear, the claws deep in his leg. That way it's not confusing. The bear tried several times to cut Chris with his other claws, but Chris managed to avoid it by twisting and bending his body. He glanced down and saw the dirk. It was just out of arm's reach. He needed to get free, but the grip on his leg was iron tight. He thought about using his gun again, but he knew Draven would be upset. Maybe I could get him to lower me? Despite the pain, Chris was able to segment it in his mind. Despite the pain, Chris was able to segment it in his mind. He began to use his speed to punch the werebear faster than the werebear could deal with, all while dodging and hanging upside down. He was only able to punch him in the sternum, but it was enough to get him to lower the arm holding him. He was able to grab the dagger off the floor. Chris quickly took the chance to stab it into the werebear's heart. As the dagger went in, he fell to the ground as the werebear went unconscious. Chris pulled himself free of the claws and stood up. He made sure he didn't put all the weight on his injured leg while it healed. He looked down at the hand that was mangled. He wiggled the fingers. It wasn't all the way healed, but at least the tendons were knitted back together. He looked down at his target. He was still in his werebear form. He wasn't dead. Over the comm link, he heard Draven say, "Good job. About as smooth as I expected for your first time. Now finish it." Chris knelt next to the werebear. He grabbed the dagger and moved it from side to side, making a cut big enough to get his hands in, but without taking the dagger out of the heart. He slipped his hands in, pushing them down between the rib cage, breaking a few ribs in the process. He gripped the heart and pulled it out of the body. The dirk dropped to the floor. The heart's body... I'm going to say ripped it out of the body. I like that word better. He grabbed the heart and ripped it out of the body. The dirk dropped to the floor. The target's body reverted back into a human with a hole in his chest. Chris stood up and sniffed at the heart. The blood smelled like what he remembered blood smelled like when he was mortal. Unlike human blood, there was no sweet smell, no intoxicating color. There was no inborn desire to drink this blood. He turned and looked out the window, showing off the heart, before speaking into his mic. There. Done. Suddenly, it felt like everything in the room was vibrating. The whole world shook with a gentle hum. A hum that was getting louder. Everything was turning white. Everything was turning white, like when a picture is overexposed. Then there was nothing. Chris crumpled to the floor, the heart flopping out of his hand and rested on the ground. The heart flopped. Chris crumpled to the ground, the heart flopped out of his hand and rested on the ground. I wrote it so it would feel more fast and fluid, and I didn't like it, so I changed it again. Sounds better now that I'm reading it out loud. New scene. April 19th, 1996, New York, 10:16 p.m. Philip sat in a large brown leather chair reading a newspaper. The walls of the room were covered in bookcases full of books. That's usually what goes in bookcases. There was a leather couch opposite to the chair with a low-standing, dark wooden table between them. It was dim. The only light was coming from a small fire in the hearth and a standing lamp. The faint smell of burning wood perfumed the air. In the corner was a small desk with a chair. There was a closed laptop sitting on the desk. Philip sighed as he put down the paper and leaned back in his chair. It was a rare moment where all his plans were in motion and there was nothing for him to do but wait and see how they would turn out. He was not used to relaxing. It was stressful doing nothing. He looked up at the clock. It was evening, but for his kind, it was early morning. He sighed as he lifted the paper back up and turned the page. The newspaper read, "Insert news headline about current events of April 1996. I still need to do that. I'll do that later." Philip tried to keep up on current events. A lot of his kind chose to ignore it and just live out their lives in their own little world. He liked to keep in touch with the humans that inhabit the world. Inhabited this planet. I said world too many times. He liked to keep in touch with the humans that inhabit this planet. It allowed him to better live among the humans. I'm going to just say better live among them. And to help them out in his own way. Let's read that from the beginning. He liked to keep in touch with the humans that inhabit this planet. He liked to keep in touch with the humans that inhabited this planet. It allowed him to better live among them to help them out in his own way. It's better. Philip began to feel a sudden nagging at the back of his mind, like he had forgotten something. At first, he ignored it, flipping the page in the newspaper, but he couldn't get it out of his head. It became stronger, and he realized what it was. He was being called. It had been a long time since one of his children tried to call him. He thought about ignoring it, closing his mind, but he had nothing going on, and it could be important. Or a trap. Philip folded the newspaper and put it on the table. He sat up straight in the chair and closed his eyes. He lowered his defenses and focused on the sensation in his mind, allowing it to overtake him. Gradually, the feeling became stronger, morphing from a latent thought into a full-blown feeling, encompassing his conscious mind. There was a familiar sensation, one he knew well. Younger vampires, those who have more than one child, can't always tell who is calling them. It takes time and effort to learn the unique connections each vampire can make and how those affect the mind of the elder vampire. Philip was no young vampire. It didn't take him long to sort out who this calling was coming from. It was Draven. Philip was a little surprised. Draven would only be calling him for two reasons. There was an emergency that he couldn't handle alone, which hadn't happened in many, many centuries, or Draven was setting up a trap. Philip trusted Draven more than any other vampire, but he knew he could never fully trust another of his kind. Time changes a vampire, just like it does with humans. But humans don't have to fight against the inborn bloodlust that vampires do. It can twist a person in ways most people wouldn't expect. Still, trap or not, he thought it best to find Draven and answer the calling. He would be cautious. He is always cautious. He focused his mind on the calling again. It was starting to pull him. He could feel it. It was urging him to go west. He focused on that feeling, letting it get stronger. I think I'm going to say grow here. Letting it grow stronger. Younger vampires don't have the experience or focus to delve deeper into a calling, to help pinpoint the location, but Philip could. It was somewhere northwest, around 2,000 miles away. He opened his eyes and stood up. He walked over to a bookshelf and pulled out a large atlas of the United States. He walked over to the desk and put it down, opening it to a page of the whole country. Looking at the map, he almost intuitively knew that his destination was Montana, but it was hard for him to narrow down exactly where in Montana. Once he got closer, he would be able to narrow down exactly where just by following the calling. I say narrow in two sentences in a row, and as I have already said, I don't like doing stuff like that. Let's see what we can change that to. Looking at the map, he almost intuitively knew that his destination was Montana, but it was hard for him to be specific. Alright, let's read that sentence again. Looking at the map, he almost intuitively knew that this destination was Montana. But it was hard for him to be specific as to where in Montana. Once he got closer, he would be able to narrow down exactly where just by following the calling. He sat down and opened his laptop. Opening a web browser, he went to a flight booking service and purchased the next flight he could to Billings, Montana. April 21st, 1996, Montana, 2:56 a.m. Draven was sitting in a chair in his living room watching Chris, who was lying unconscious on the couch. Draven was sitting in the chair in his living room. He was watching Chris, who was lying unconscious on the couch. Yeah, two sentences, why not? It had been nearly 14 days since Chris had gone unconscious. Unconscious, two sentences in a row. Chris was lying, synonyms. Comatose? He was watching Chris, who was lying comatose on the couch. It had been nearly 14 days since Chris had gone unconscious. His blood was still flowing, albeit at a much slower pace than was normal. All of his injuries he had sustained healed at a normal rate for a vampire. Draven had tried all he knew, which admittedly wasn't much. He'd never seen a vampire fall unconscious like this unless there was magic at play, or they were entering the sleep. It had been a long time since Draven had seen such magic, and Chris was much too young to have been able to invoke the sleep. So magic is actually not very powerful and goes in waves in the setting. So kind of want to change this detail about him saying magic. Let me think about it here for a second. It had been a long time since Draven had seen magic. Seen such magic. It had been a long time since Draven had seen such magic. Chris was much too young to have been able to invoke the sleep. No, I'm going to leave that in there. Adding the very long time is good, but no, I'm going to leave it in there. Alright. Although that is a long sentence. It had been a long time since Draven had seen such magic, and Chris was much too young to have been able to invoke the sleep. Yeah, but it works for me. Draven was awoken out of his thoughts as he heard a knock on the door. He got up, walked down the hallway, and opened the door. I'm just gonna say it. Oh, what happened there? What is happening? The story's gone. Why are you doing this to me, Word? It is freaking out, man. Well, nothing to do but save it, I guess. Which I can't do because I can't see it. Well, let's hope it auto-saved. Oh, it's gonna save. Alright. Let's open that back up. Alright, I think we're on page 5. Let's hope the change is saved. Well, it didn't save it had been a long time. But it did save when I changed comatose. Alright. Draven was sitting in the chair in his living room. He was watching Chris. How did I miss that one? Alright. It had been I'm going to say it's been an age rather than a long time. It had been an age since Draven had seen such magic, and Chris was much too young to have been able to invoke the sleep. Draven was awoken out of his thoughts as he heard a knock on the front door. He got up, walked down the hallway, and opened it. On the other side was Philip, or as Draven knew him, Theron. Hello, Theron. Took you long enough. Hello, Theron. Took you longer to get here than I anticipated. Yes, well, I've taken to not using my powers if it can be avoided. It's too easy to be caught using them these days. What is so urgent you would call for me? Draven waved Philip in and closed the door behind him. It's Christopher. Something happened to him. They walked down the hall to the living room while talking. I don't know what happened to him. One minute he was fighting a werebear, and the next minute he was lying unconscious on the floor. Once I realized he wasn't waking up, I took him to one of my safe houses. That was nearly 14 days ago. I kind of want to change, I don't know what happened to him. I'm going to say I don't know what is happening to him, because it's still going on. I don't know what is happening to him. One minute he was fighting a werebear, and the next minute he was lying unconscious on the floor. Once I realized he wasn't waking up, I took him to one of my safe houses. That was nearly 14 days ago. They entered the living room, and Philip walked over to the couch where Chris was lying down. He looked down at him, and he was perfectly still. And his face was unnaturally pale, even for a vampire. Philip looked back at Draven. You say he was fighting a werebear? Draven nodded. Philip looked back to Draven. Well, I don't see how a werebear could do this, and magic is rare nowadays, is what I'm going to add. Well, I don't see how a werebear could do this, and magic is rare enough in this age. In fact, mostly absent from the world. Alright. Well, I don't see how a werebear could do this, and magic is rare enough in this age. In fact, mostly absent from the world. This looks like he's entered the sleep, but he's far too young to have figured out how to do that. Draven walked up to Philip and stood next to him, looking down at Chris. I agree, I don't know what this is. There was a time, nearly 9 months ago, when he fell unconscious. We were doing an endurance exercise, trying to train while not drinking any blood. After a few days, he went unconscious. At the time, I thought it was lack of blood. I gave him some blood, and he woke up in a few hours. Philip nodded. I'm assuming you tried that again. Draven gave a side glance to Philip. Of course I tried that. It was the first thing I tried. I've been feeding him every day, but hardly any of it goes down his throat. I don't know what to do, and I thought you might have some answers. It's why I called you. Werebear, where? Oh, yeah, one of the characters, Chris, killed a werebear in the beginning of the scene. Stabbed it in the heart with a dirk that was silver dirk, and then opened the chest and ripped the heart out. And then he fell unconscious. And Chris is a vampire. These characters are vampires. Yeah. Thanks for stopping by and joining chat. I appreciate that. Glad you could stop by. Hello. Draven, where was I? Draven gave a side glance to Philip. I said that. Philip put the back of his hand on Chris's forehead. It was cold and clammy, but not unlike a corpse. He frowned. It's not unlike the sleep. His body has shut down, but he's only 30. He couldn't have known how to go into sleep. Not voluntarily, anyways. Besides, if you have been feeding him every day, he should have woken up by now. Draven nodded. That's why I called you. You are the most knowledgeable of our kind that I know, and you have a personal interest in the boy. I thought if anyone could help, you could. Philip turned, facing Draven. Thank you. I appreciate the trust you've put in me. Something else is at work here, and I'm not sure what. I could try and relive the last few moments before he passed out. Maybe that would give us some... Chris began to stir, and Philip stopped mid-sentence. Both him and Draven looked down at Chris. His eyes were fluttering open, and a groan escaped his mouth. Draven and Philip glanced at each other. Both had a perplexed look on their face. Draven looked over to the clock and half said under his breath, nearly 14 days to the minute. He looked over at Philip and asked in hushed tones, That can't be a coincidence, can it? Chris sat up and looked up at Draven. Sat up and looked up? I don't like that. Chris sat up and looked. I'm just going to say looked at Draven. Confusion in his eyes. What happened? Where are we? Are we in Montana? Are we in the Montana safe house? How did we get here? Draven tried to calm Chris down, speaking softly. Yes, we are in Montana. You fell unconscious when I couldn't figure out why I brought you here so we could be safe. Do you remember anything? Chris lowered his eyes, concentrating on his last thoughts. I just removed the target's heart. I was holding it up so you could see. Chris paused, collecting his thoughts. Then there was, I don't know, a vibration. Like the air was hitting my skin. It got stronger. Then everything went white. And then I woke up here. Draven frowned. Strange. I've never... Draven was interrupted as Chris noticed that they were not alone in the room. He nodded towards Philip, asking in a slightly disgusted tone, what is he doing here? Draven looked back at Philip, pacing the room. I called for him. You were unconscious for 14 days. I didn't know what else to do. I thought he might be able to help. Do I have him to thank for being awake? Draven shook his head. No, you seem to wake up on your own. Good, I hate to think I owe him something. Oh, sorry. Good, I hate to think I owe him something else. Chris looked over at Philip. Aren't you even going to say hello to me, Oliver? You've come all this way. Philip stopped pacing and walked back to the couch. Hello, Christopher. And it's Philip now. Oh, plushicle. It's basically just things on my wish list, and I am going to buy them for decorations. So it's just helping people decorate the room, I guess. I think the current plushie I was going to pick was a purple dragon. I don't even know if it's for sale anymore. But I figured it would be fun if people wanted to donate to decorate the room, they could. So it's nothing too important. It's just something I put up there. Let's see. Here we go. Chris glared at Philip. It's Chris now. Oh, and I, of course, don't mind you interrupting. I might lose my thought process, but that's perfectly fine. I'd rather talk to Chad about and just kind of work on the story in the background. Oh, it doesn't seem to work? My bad. I didn't even think about checking to see if that worked. I haven't actively streamed mostly this year, so I didn't check everything. I did have to check some of my sound though, because it was off the last time I tried streaming. And I hope I fixed that. It sounds like I fixed that. You can hear me, so that's good. Chris glared at Philip. It's Chris now. Okay. Chris glared at Philip. Oh, and it sounds good. Awesome. Thank you. Other than my friend Grumpiest Gus who clicked lurk, you're the first one that came in today and said anything, and I appreciate that. And it's a little bit more comforting knowing that it sounds good. Chris glared at Philip. It's Chris now, Philip. I'm better now. Shouldn't you be on your way, or are you going to twist happening to me into some sort of advantage for yourself? I'm no longer that naive human you manipulated. You can't... Philip interrupted Chris. Can you try and find a little faith that you can place in me? If you can put a little faith in me, I can help. We need to work together to unravel this mystery. Alright, thanks for the lurk. Need to fix this sentence. I say faith twice, and I don't like doing that. Although it makes sense. Can you try to place a little faith in me? Can you try and find a little faith that you can place in me? If you can do that, I can help. Yeah, I'll say it that way. If you can do that, I can help. We need to work together to unravel this mystery. I think that sounds better. Said can twice. Philip interrupted Chris. Can you try and find a little faith that you can place in me? If you can do that, I can help. We need to work together to unravel this mystery. Oh, that sounds so much smoother. Alright. Chris was taken aback. What do you think is going on? Philip ignored the question and asked one of his own. Have you noticed anything different about you? Different than other vampires? Chris sighed. What do you mean? Is there anything you see that other vampires don't see or don't feel? Chris shrugged. Perhaps. I seem to have the ability to tell if someone is human or not. I can usually tell what they are. I also get fleeting moments of emotions from other people. Philip nodded. It sounds like you might be an aura reader. Exceedingly rare. I knew there was something special about you. As you grow and explore your powers, you'll be able to understand them and be able to control them. But that doesn't explain this. That is a long sentence. I don't like how that is structured. I forgot to turn off my D&D bot. I have a D&D bot and a D&D webpage, and it is now in chat. Oh well. I forgot to... Anyways. Long sentence. Gotta fix it. I knew there was something special about you. Period. As you grow and explore your powers, you'll better understand them. Yeah, it's gonna make this into 2 sentences. I learned at a young age that I do run-on sentences, and I have worked hard on making sure I break them up. It is one of the things I learned in one of my early writing courses in college, and I've taken it to heart, and I think it's better for it. As you grow and explore your powers, you'll better understand them. You'll be able to control them. As you grow and explore your powers, you'll better understand them. You'll be able to control them. You'll also be able to better control them, comma, but that doesn't explain this. There we go. Let's read that again. I think I got it. As you grow and explore your powers, you'll better understand them. You'll be able to better control them too. That's what I'm going to add. But that doesn't explain this. Is there something else you're not telling me? Even something small and unimportant? Chris paused a moment, thinking, well, there is something else, but I'm not sure if it's anything. Like I said, I can tell when someone is a vampire. Even before I returned, I had this feeling about you. I wasn't always aware of it, but sometimes your presence would seep through and I'd feel it. I felt something similar when I met Draven. For a time, I thought it was because you were both vampires. I felt this way about a few humans as well. I kind of want to add a little bit here. For a time, I thought it was because you were both vampires, but I felt this way. But since then, I felt this way about a few humans as well. Longer. Try not to make sentences longer, but I think it flows better. For a time, I thought it was because you were both vampires, but since then, I felt this way about a few humans as well. I just thought I was imagining it, or maybe that it was people's natural presence. I'm not sure. Philip waited a moment to say anything, lost in thought before speaking. Philip waited a moment to say anything, lost in thought before speaking. Do you still remember what I taught you about meditation? Chris looked up at Philip quizzically and nodded. I want you to try to go into a deep state of meditation. Empty your mind. Let the energy of your subconscious overcome you, and let's see what will happen. Chris looked over at Draven questioningly. Draven nodded back in reply and said, You can You can use the room down the hallway on your right. Chris stood up and started walking out of the room. He looked back at them doubtfully before entering the hallway. After Chris left, Draven looked at Philip. What are you thinking? He's young. Nothing will happen. He can't possibly do it. Philip answered, I don't know. He's special, and something is happening to him. A bit of self-reflection never hurt. I don't know what will happen. Hold on a moment. I'm gonna take a drink. My mouth is very dry. Chris opened the door to the room. He'd been to this house once before, but never in this room. It was void. Ooh, I forgot of. And this is why I edit all the time. I forget little things here and there. It's terrible. It was void of any furniture, so... Oof. It was void of any furniture to sit on, and there were no windows. Near the walls of the room were various waist-high candle stands. He sighed as he entered the room, closing the door behind him. He walked around the room, lighting the candles before he walked to the center and sat down, crossing his legs. He thought to himself, this is ridiculous. How is meditation supposed to help? He closed his eyes, letting his thoughts play across his conscious mind. Eventually, he was able to tune out the context of those thoughts, leaving only the impression of them on his mind. He calmed his body, relaxing, embracing nothingness. It felt like an hour had passed, but nothing happened. He opened his eyes, breaking his concentration. He felt relaxed, calm. The hunger was at bay. Nothing he hadn't felt before. He had done this often as a human, and then occasionally as a vampire. It had helped him maintain control over his darker impulses. But he had never tried to use the control over his body that he began... Long sentence. It had helped him maintain control over his darker impulses, but he had never tried to use the control over his body that he gained as a vampire to affect his medications. That should be meditations. And I spelled it wrong. Spell check. Thank goodness. Alright, so I need to change this because it is a terrible run-on sentence here. And it bothers me so much. It had helped him maintain control over his darker impulses. But he had never tried... Alright. He had found that it helped him maintain control over his darker impulses. However, he had never considered using the control over his body that he had gained as a vampire to further deepen his meditations. What am I going to do? To further deepen his meditations. Alright, let's see if that sentence is now better for it. He had found that it helped him maintain control over his darker impulses. However, he had never considered using the control over his body that he had gained as a vampire to further deepen his meditations. Yeah, it's better. It's still kind of long at the end, but better. It's a good chance that will be changed on another pass. He closed his eyes again and focused on his body. He stopped breathing, having no need for it, stilling his body. He then concentrated on his heart. He slowly began to lower his heartbeat. It took a while, but he got his heartbeat to the point where it nearly didn't beat at all. He had never lowered his heartbeat to this level before. He'd always used his ability to increase his heart rate when he needed to pass as human. Reducing it was much more difficult. He was unsure of how long he was in this state. His body was as still as it could be, his mind as blank as it had ever been. Suddenly, he sensed his body crumple to the floor, but he couldn't feel it as it happened. It was just a thought in the back of his mind. So that's where I left off the last time I was writing. I think that was a good edit. And I did a little outlining apparently on the 4th scene. So let's see what I said. I know what I said. I thought about the scene a lot actually. It's been a while since I've thought about the next scene. So having written it down is nice. So for the next scene, Chris is sitting in the living room, candles around, and a fire going in the fireplace. He thinks how silly. Oh, I just wrote the 4th scene, and this is the outline for the scene that I already wrote. So let's make sure I got all the information in the scene that I wanted to get into it. He goes into a meditative state. He's done it every once in a while as a vampire, but didn't do it as much as when he was immortal. Said that. After a bit, decided to try to apply his powers to regulating his body. Did that. Goes into a deep sleep. Did that. So technically, part of this scene is he has a vision of a choir of voices telling him he's the Presage, or something like that. His eyes open in surprise as the realization that there is something he needs to find. The city of Freiburg, which I need to add that to the scene. It has been a while since I've done any writing. I've only done editing for a while, so let's see if I can entertainingly write. I wasn't actually sure I was going to get to this point today. Alright. So, really it's a 5th scene because it's in a different place. Let's do an outline for this 5th scene first. So I don't have to... Oh, I should spell 5th right. So I don't have to think about it too much. Go ahead and delete this 4th scene note because it is done. Bam. So let's outline this next scene that I want to write and see if I can get it onto paper. Has a vision of a choir of voices telling him he's the Presage or something. I have refined that more. He is actually going to find the Fates. I'm not going to call them the Fates in this scene, but it's the Fates. There's 3 of them. Right. He wakes up in a black space. It's not even going to be a room. It's just empty space. I'm going to say no. Alright, so he has a form, but he doesn't realize that he is making his physical appearance appear as his regular body. So that is just a note for me. I may drop it into the conversation he's going to have in this place. So I want to make sure that note's down so I don't forget about it. So, yeah. So that's what happens. It's going to be a weird thing, I think. The place is black. Is a void of black. Yeah, I like that. I'll figure out how to describe it later. Alright. So he wakes up in this metaphysical place. Looks around confused. A voice speaks to him. Oh, a voice speaks, but not directly at him. as if to someone else. A second voice pops in, saying, agreeing. Then a third voice says, we have finally found him. Then Christopher is gonna be confused. He's going to look around for the voices, and then after asking about them, a concentrated white mist that seemed to glow faintly from within appeared in front of him. Alright, so I don't need to write the description beyond that, but I wanted to get that description down because it just popped into my head. But basically, the voices are going to be disembodied. They're going to be speaking from the cloud. There's going to be a larger one, a medium-sized one, and one that appears to be thinner. They're all going to be roughly around the same height, I think. No, I want to make them similar, but just slightly different. Yeah, they are 3 different people. Alright. So then they're going to have a conversation. So let's make sure that I outline the information I want in the conversation. And so I tried this new approach where I outline my short story, and it worked for my last one, so that's why I'm kind of doing this. It also helps for streaming, I think, because it gives everyone a chance to understand my thought process on it. It helped me complete a story, that's for sure. I'm going to fix spelling, comma, yeah. Conversation, alright. So they're going to learn about the weave, the dark weave. So the weave, I'm going to introduce this concept. Oh, yes, I forgot to mention that these stories that I'm writing are background information for a novel, a world, or the world for a novel. And it's a novel I've been writing. I've been posting on my Patreon, at least the rough draft. And I wanted to get some background for the characters, and if any had read the Silmarillion, it was not intended to be read, but it has a lot of awesome information about the world that Tolkien created. And I figured if I'm going to start doing that, I could do it online, write it as a short story, so the background information for the world is written in such a way that it would also be fun to read. So I am outlining concepts like the weave and the dark weave, and this is kind of where it gets explained in a more, I guess, blunt way than it would be in the novel. So I need to outline the information that I want to put there, and sometimes it will be expanded upon in the outline, I think. And let's see. That is why I am talking about the weave and the dark weave. So the weave is a representation of time. The fates tend to the weave. There are gods. I'm not going to say if these are gods themselves. I haven't decided, honestly. I'm not even sure if I'm going to call them the Fates, but I probably will. At least while I'm writing it. I might go back and change that before I publish it. The weave is a representation of time. The Fates tend to the weave, not the wave. See, there are gods. They They help maintain the cohesiveness of the weave. And that's about all I'm going to say about the cohesiveness of the weave. I will expand upon it later, but that has more implications, but they don't need to know that yet. Let's see. So they keep the cohesiveness of the weave. He is the Presage. It's the title of the thing. They're going to talk about the Presage. They're not going to explain what the Presage is. I'm going to have someone else do that. Philip, actually. Because I want him to have a moment to kind of like fill out his background with his knowledge. The weave is a representation of time. The fates tend to the weave. There are gods. Want to make sure that's mentioned. I'm not going to say if the fates are gods. I said this already. The fates maintain the cohesiveness of the weave. They're not going to say presage, but they are going to say that. Before they get to that, they're going to say it was hard to find you. You had to find us. See, they also want to say this is not good. They now know that Chris is a vampire. He was not meant to be a vampire. And this is where they say he is part of the dark weave. So there is a dark weave now. I need to make sure that the dark weave was created when vampires were born. And the dark weave is harder to see for the fates. Yeah, that's the information I want to impart about the weave. This is your job. We don't know how you being a vampire will affect what you must do. This has never happened. This is your job. We don't know how you being a vampire will affect what you must do. This has never happened. You must find the child. You will know what to do. Alright, so I think it's outlined after they mention that. I'm going to say he opens his eyes in surprise at the realization that he needs to find the city of Furbolg. Alright, so I outlined the scene. Let's see if I can write the scene. Alright, so when I'm writing, I usually don't read when I'm writing out loud. I will write a paragraph. I might talk about the paragraph while I'm writing it. So unlike when I'm reading it, there will be a little bit of pause in speaking. Feel free to talk during this, obviously. The Twitch is about being interactive, and I want to be interactive. Okay, so, and you can follow along on the screen, obviously. Because you should be able to see the writing, I hope. It might be hard to see on mobile. I wouldn't be able to see it on mobile. Alright. Christopher opened his eyes. He had no idea where he was, but it was surreal. There was no space. There was a black void at his feet and whiteness beyond that. There was nothing else. He took a step forward, and while he felt like he moved, nothing changed. Alright, he took a step forward, and while he felt like he moved, nothing changed. The last thing he remembered, he was falling unconscious. He thought to himself, is this a dream? He bent down and felt the ground. While his hand stopped, he felt nothing up against it. He had no idea how he wasn't falling through the emptiness. He tried to wake himself up, but to no avail. He tried to wake himself up. He slapped his face, pinched his arm. All the He tried to wake himself. He slapped his face, pinched his arm, all the traditional ways one is supposed to shock oneself out of a dream, but nothing worked. It only stung. I cannot spell that word well enough for the spell checker. Hate when that happens. Alright, and there was an older female voice that emanated. Is that closer? Yep, much closer. Right. He was unsure of how long he had been there. For a moment, it seemed like an eternity, but yet, it couldn't have been more than a few minutes. He let out a grunt of frustration at not being sure of what to do, and then he let out a grunt of frustration at not being sure of what to do. Suddenly, out of nowhere, there was an older female voice that emanated from in front of him. It's him. We found him. Finally. I'm gonna say, oh, hello, Zero Fear. Welcome to my writing stream. I'm just working on a scene here. I did an outline a little bit earlier for the scene, the information I want to put in it. Is it him? Did we find him? Yeah, that's better. A second voice off from his right side replied, "Hi, Bill." A second email voice, one that sounded smoother. Second female voice, one that sounded smoother, came from his right side. Second female voice, oh, I read that. Chris looked to his right, but he couldn't see where the voice was coming from. But he spoke anyways. Hello? Who are you? I can't see my keyboard. Alright. A third voice spoke from behind. This one sounded more like it came from a younger female. It's him. But he found us. So I'm trying to think about how I want to phrase this. Well, that's supposed to be a comment. The first voice spoke again. She sounded slightly confused. He did? No, I think he met us halfway. Either way, it wasn't supposed to happen this way. It's never happened this way. Chris was confused and a little offered. Should be offended. He didn't like being ignored. Show yourself. I shouldn't be using numbers. Oh, I plan on checking out AEW, provided Loctavian is not streaming, because I watch it with Loctavian, and they can't watch it while streaming during the subathon because of DMCA, sadly, broadcast rights and stuff like that. So I've actually missed the last week. But we're planning on catching up when the subathon is over, and hopefully I will be able to see it on Wednesday. So I didn't know it was a 2-year anniversary, though. That's awesome. I only sort of know what happened last week, but Octavia told me a little bit, because they heard a little bit here and there, but I'm looking forward to see what happened. Apparently Jungle Boy was in fighting, had a really good match, and Jungle Boy is one of my favorite. Luchasaurus is my favorite, but I just like the Jungle Express in general. Marcus Stunt is freaking amazing. He has the energy and the heart of a lion. I don't know. It's just hilarious to see this little guy try to take on everyone else. He has a lot of spirit. Anyways, I like the Jungle Express. Then from the side and the right, two similar clouds appeared, although the one on the right was a bit thinner. And alright. Then from the side and the right, two similar clouds appeared, although the one on the right was a bit thinner, and the one behind him was shorter. I don't really like that, but I'm going to leave it there for now. One thing I've learned is you can always go back and edit. So it's more important to just get it on the paper. Well, in this case, in the Word document. Otherwise, I just won't get anything done. Marco's son is AEW's Spike Dudley. I don't know too much about wrestling, honestly, other than what I've watched in the last little while. I'm not sure who Spike Dudley is. The name sounds familiar, though. Random beats got in my head. It's awesome. Stream beats for the win. Then from the side, just don't like the paragraph. Oh well, let's skip the paragraph. I need to name them. Let's see. Oh, this is a short story. So, what I like to do is write short stories online, and so the whole process is online. This one is a urban fantasy. It's about three vampires. A guy named Chris, who is a younger vampire from the '60s, who was turned in the '60s, and it's 1996 now. Set in Earth, and then he has a special destiny to play, and it's unfolding here. I'm using these backstories as a background for a novel that I've been writing, put on my Patreon, who stars one of the characters in the short story called Philip. So this is all just background for a world that I've been working on and off for... I don't know now, it's been way too long. 15 years? I've connected a lot of different stories into this world that I've created. I guess it started around when it started to come together about 10 years ago from a story, yeah. Anyways, so right now Chris had woken up from passing out randomly for about 2 weeks. The person who had turned him called in his maker to figure out what was going on, because this is unusual. Then he wakes up, and and it's a mystery, and it's slowly unfolding. Right now, he's in some kind of metaphysical space, and the fates that I'm adding to the world, the concept of the three fates in the weave, is being shown for the first time in the setting. I did the outline earlier today, and so I'm just fleshing out this outline and into a scene. And I've gone over and over in my head with the scene but I haven't, obviously I haven't written it down, and I haven't really thought about it for probably a month or so. But hopefully it'll come out how I want. It usually does. The first cloud spoke, and as she did so, the light slightly fluttered to the patterns of her voice. The first cloud spoke. Okay. Better, Christopher? I don't know if that's what I want them to say first. I'm going to ask, what have you become? Oh, sorry, I'll fix that in a minute so you can see it. Oh no, he's not discovering that he is a vampire. I'll just go ahead and explain the crux of the story. So, the world is set in the modern day. Magic is coming back. I don't know if you played Shadowrun, but magic is coming back in a wave. And this vampire right here is the herald for the prophecy about the magic coming back. So he's kind of like the sign, so that the prophecy has started. And so the Fates, who is the sign for the prophecy, did not expect for the vampire to be turned into, or for the sign to be turned into a vampire. And that's what I'm going to get across in this scene, actually. And so he's just finding out that not only is he a vampire, he's supposed to actually be this other thing in a world that he had no idea existed, effectively. And so I'm trying to get some information across, about prophecies and how they work in this world, and how supernatural, the Fates exist in this world. So yeah, I'm going to try to make it not as confusing as possible, because that would be nice. But I understand how this could be confusing at the time, because I'm confused how I want to do this a little bit. I had this image of these three Fates speaking in one after the other, almost completing each other's sentences, and Christopher just kind of looking around at them confused, not sure who to talk to. And he's not going to understand most of what they're going to say. Hopefully, it'll come across to the reader in such a way that they will understand it, but he's going to be confused, because this is so far out of his sphere of knowledge that it's not going to make sense until he goes and talks to the older vampires. Philip, who is the main character of my novel, actually is part of the short story, and he's been alive for a long time, so he actually knows what this sign is. He's been looking for this prophecy for a very long time to actually start. And you'll find out if you read the novel, which the rough draft is being released on my Patreon for free if you want to check it out. It starts with talking about the prophecy, and his sister was actually the prophet, and he has basically been alive for a very long time and is trying to make sure that the prophecy is fulfilled in the best way possible to live up to his sister's memory. So yeah, it's a big, complicated, weaving story, and it's probably the most complicated thing that I've tried to write, and so I've started taking notes. I didn't used to take notes like I used to when I was a kid. I'd just write, and hopefully finish something, but that didn't work for me. So this has been working, though. I finished one short story on the series earlier this year, and started this one, and I was really excited when the other one finished. It took about 9 weeks, and I'm excited to get another one going and just, start writing again. It's been a long time since I've done any writing. I've edited over the last year, but actual creating it's gone by the wayside. Let's see, the first cloud spoke, and I read that already. Oh, Chris looked confused. Chris looked confused. What do you mean? The voice from behind him spoke. Oh, my D&D thing, yes. I try to run a D&D campaign about once a month, but scheduling is difficult, because we're all adults in the campaign, and we have lives, and so it doesn't always happen every month, and not on schedule I'd like. But I do have my own setting for the D&D game. It's actually based on, not this setting, I'm basically working on 2 very big settings. It's called Shattered Kingdoms, which is for my LARP event I run. And because we couldn't run LARP events, I said, I'm going to just start doing D&D in this world and build it up some more, because I love world building. So the D&D is actually set in a world called Shattered Kingdoms, and that's what I run the D&D in. And I have a webpage for it. I have a wiki for the LARP event that's about 90 pages big right now. And so it's pretty detailed. I've ran it for about 5 years now. Hopefully I'm going to, and then we're going to be able to start back up next year, I hope, and so run another event. But in the meantime, I've been doing the D&D and have its own webpage for the D&D. I've been having a lot of fun doing that. It's very roleplay centric and exploration rather than combat, although the last session was a lot of combat. But the first 4 sessions there was 1 combat, so I kind of had to make up for it a little bit because my players like combat. So hopefully I will have another game in October, I think, because the last one was in September. So we got to schedule it, and I'm not sure, but it's on Sundays at noon to 4 Pacific Standard Time. And Loctavian tries to make it when they can, because they're one of the players, but their schedule doesn't always allow for it. Not the Twitch game, no. I was thinking once I was getting back into more content creation stuff that I was going to run some one-off D&D Twitch games and on my Discord, and I'd be looking for people that wanted to just play doing that. So there's a chance in the future. I don't know how soon in the future, but you might be able to be involved in one of the D&D games. So if you'd like to dig the Discord, join the Discord, you can do that. It's !Discord. I think I have that bot working. But that's usually where I post about the D&D stuff. Yep, that's it. Hopefully that still works, because my donate button didn't work. I think, yeah, hopefully the invite's still good. Oh, and that's one of the web pages for the D&D game. The D&D Twitch game, I was trying to evolve it a little bit to make it more interactive. So, like, for channel points and bits, you can give the players fate points, which they can spend, or you can increase or decrease their rolls, or increase their next encounter. So I was trying to make it a little bit more interactive than I've seen other D&D shows. And it's worked a little bit here and there. Oh, it's not showing up as a link? I'm sorry. Hopefully copying and pasting will work. If not, I can always message you on Loctavian or on Discord, because I can find you on Loctavian's Discord and send you an invite there if it doesn't work. But yeah, and another thing I was trying with the webpage to make it more interactive is I'm basically creating a lexicon of all the characters. I'm making a map of the world that you can view. I haven't updated the D&D summary game, or I'm writing it as like a log. So each session is like a log that one character is doing, and so you can catch up on the campaign just by reading it in a blog format. It's like a journal from a character's perspective. But I haven't kept up with the journals much as I should. I think I only had the first 2 sessions up there. That's pretty much the only content creation stuff I've been doing this year is that D&D game, and it's fallen by the wayside a little bit. But I'm trying to get everything to be more scheduled. See, the voice from the cloud behind him spoke. Ooh, yeah, in the Discord! That's awesome! Thanks for joining. Chris looked back as he spoke and then whipped his head to the right as the... to the right spoke as well. So, I view stories in my head like movies. I do cutting in my head, I do scenes over and over in my head, and when I write them, I try to describe what I see. Not everyone thinks like that, and it's actually kind of fun, because I can just play a movie in my head that I created, and it's kind of fun. So for this scene, I had the idea of, like, Christopher being in the middle of these 3 creatures, clouds, and they're all speaking, finishing each other's sentences and stuff like that, just looking around. I'm not sure if I can get it to look like what I have in my head in a writing form that isn't confusing. So I'm taking a lot of time trying to figure out how to make that work. So that's why I keep focusing on these small sentences here. Happy Betty says, yeah, I think in pictures, but I have a hard time translating that into words, and I'm not good at drawing. Yeah, I couldn't draw either, and so I read a lot as a kid. I had a natural inclination to read, and so I read a lot, and I figured, I've read a lot, right? I should be able to write a lot. It didn't work out. It took a lot of time, a lot of effort. I've done, a lot of practice, and I'm still not as good as I would like, but I am content with how I do it. But yeah, I understand just wanting to express yourself, and it's really hard to find a medium where you can do that. Because I've tried drawing, I've tried painting, tried sculpting. My hands just, it's too frustrating. Like I've done sewing, just arts and crafts are fun. But I can't focus on them long enough to learn enough to be able to have what's in my head on the table. Ooh, yeah, creating role-playing characters is fun. I got D&D Beyond, and I just started buying books on there instead of physical books, and it's fun to just go in the character creator and just make characters. And I like how 5th edition added backgrounds. It's kind of a nice little generator to kind of like give you a startup on making backgrounds and stuff like that, or character backgrounds. So that's also another fun creative outlet. Really get your mind going, I think, at least for me. Probably for you too, based on what you said. I've also always wanted to get into movie making, at least when I was a kid. I actually took a video course in high school. My high school had some really nice random classes sometimes, but I did one class with video making, and it was great. Oh, you like? But I've never really got back into it. Like, I have a YouTube channel, I record my LARP, I do a little bit of editing on LARP stuff, but it's mostly just fighting videos. But I had this great idea for like a story-driven LARP combat idea. It's going to be corny, it's going to be great, it's collaborative storytelling, and I hope I can get my friends to get on board. I have this big production schedule that's in my head that I want to write out, and so it's going to be my first real effort at a video project, creative video project. Your roommate wants to do that. He's watching a lot of videos about movie making and gets really into behind the scenes and stuff like that. Yeah, it's fun. It's also really hard. But what is it? Like, just sitting down there and staring at a video editing for hours is hard. I edit a podcast, and it's usually take 2 hours, and I have to get it down to about an hour and a half, and that feels like it takes forever. But it's really nice when I actually finish it, and that's just simple jump cuts. It's not even video editing. But I hope to get a lot of people working on the project, and that will make it easier, because there's certain aspects of videos that I would like to do. I'd like to be a director-ish. I'd like to do the writing. I could live without being the editor and the videographer. Although I do enjoy doing the video part and creating angles and stuff like that, because I'm also do photography. And I don't know. I'm not an expert. I'm not a professional, but I'm also not an amateur at photography, and a lot of those skills translate to videography, and it's been fun messing around with that. So hopefully I can get this thing going, or this project going. I don't think I'm going to start shooting until minimum 6 months, because there's a lot of writing and creative work behind the scenes and getting people to actually participate. I'm actually going to try and do a Kickstarter and run like a LARP production camp out for people, so everyone can come. We can do all the shooting like a weekend or 2 weekends, and then there's also a chance for people to just want to do some or just make guest appearances, or just watch, or just be part of the production event. Can help support by donating on Kickstarter to get a ticket effectively to go. Oh, LARP is fun. There is a wide variety of LARP, though. I play a game called Amp Guard. I found it when I was 16, back in like 1999, I think. It's actually where I met Locke. And Amp Guard is like League of Legends compared to other LARPs, which are more like Skyrim. League of Legends. So in Amtgard, you have classes and battle and stuff, and a lot of people pick a persona, and you have class abilities and stuff. But we play it in games usually that are designed like capture the flag or hold the point. So it's more like League of Legends competitive stuff. We do quests sometimes too, but we don't do them as frequently as like thinking of another LARP. Shadow Accord is in the Pacific Northwest. They're really roleplay heavy. They still have combat and stuff. There's Alliance, which is also really roleplay heavy, and it's more what people think about the roleplay aspect. Because in Antwerp, there's little active role playing on a weekly basis. So I don't know. Just like board games, there's just so many different kind of games out there that are LARP. But I think most people would be able to find one that they would enjoy. So I can always help you look for one in your area if you want to give one a try and talk about that. I really, when I started, I was really into the fighting part of LARP because Amtgard has a really good fighting culture, foam fighting culture. It's probably more technique-based than a lot of the other LARPs that you might find. And I really got into the fighting aspect rather than the magic and class abilities and stuff, although that's fun too. And then as I got older, I started doing game mastering and making scenarios, running games, running big events, cooking. I did a lot of large cooking for my organization. I've been on the board of director. I've done the business aspect of the LARP because it's also an organization. So there's a lot you can do. I learned a lot from the organization that I'm part of. Oh, basically Portland? Okay. Yeah, there's a group in Oregon City. There's a group for Amtgard. There's a group in Oregon City. There's a group in Troutdale. There was one in Hillsborough, but I'm not sure if they're meeting right now. So yeah, if you ever want to give it a try, you could make your way out there. There's usually loaner equipment and stuff like that. Right now we have to wear masks and stuff like that, and of course to be safe. The Oregon City one's only meeting every other week. Yeah, and then there's Shadow Accord is something I mentioned, and Alliance. Those are the more roleplay LARPs that I know of in the area. They meet on a monthly basis at campouts, and that costs more money. Amtgard's pretty low cost barrier, which is kind of nice. It's one of the reasons why I was able to stay in it, I guess. Although I want better stuff, better looking costumes and stuff, but I haven't put in the effort to learn how to do it, so I have to pay for it. I'm not sure how much you're actually interested in the fighting aspect, but if you want to see some videos that are decent quality, I'm going to just post my YouTube here really quick. That should be the right address. Yeah, and there's also examples of the battle games. It's not just fighting or stick fighting. Yeah, feel free to check that out if you'd like. Let's see. Chris looked back at as she spoke, then whipped his head to the right as the cloud to the right spoke. We could not see you. before turning back to the one in front of him who spoke again in quick succession. You are no longer human. Alrighty, thanks for the lurk. I appreciate you stopping by and chatting too. It's fun. I'm glad I'm doing this again. Christopher shook his head. No, I'm a vampire. The cloud seemed to pause before the larger one spoke. You're part of the dark weave. This has never happened. It shouldn't happen. Oops. The cloud seemed to pause before the larger one spoke. You're part of the dark weave. This has never happened. It shouldn't happen. Christopher looked confused. The dark weave? The middle-sized cloud responded. Yes, it was created when the curse of the vampire was performed. The smaller one continued. It matters not. He will perform as expected. So, running out of a little steam here of creativity, but I want to finish this scene. So I'm going to end the scene earlier than I will have liked, and I will have to rework on the scene another time. Because I don't think I'm going to fit all the information here that I want to, although I fit in more information than I thought I was going to in this brief amount of writing I've done. As the three clouds moved in, speaking in unison, they converged on him. Find the child. Then his world went blank once more. That is a really long run-on sentence, so I'm going to have to edit that. Let's see. I'm going to fix this to be more aligned with how I originally viewed it. Chris opened his eyes. Surprise. He was laying on the floor. Chris opened his eyes in surprise. He was laying on the floor. He knew what he had to do. He had to go to Freiburg at once. So that was that scene. About a page, not too bad. Gonna have to rewrite the whole thing, I think. But that's what editing is for. You know, I actually think I got most of this information from the I wanted to put in there. Hard to find you. It'd help us find you. I think put that in there. I did not put in the weave as a representation of time. I didn't say that they are the fates. I did talk about the weave. I didn't mention anything about gods, so I need to add that. Actually, let me highlight that so I know I want to do that later. So I'll highlight that. I didn't say that they maintain the cohesiveness of the weave, although they do. I might explain that in another scene with Philip, which is the next scene actually. So that's not necessarily going to be rewritten to the scene above. They know now that Chris is a vampire. I think they know that's not good. I think I mentioned that. He was not meant to be a vampire. Darkweave, I mentioned that. Darkweave was created when vampires were born. I mentioned that. The Darkweave is harder to see for the fates. Didn't mention that too much. So I might need to expand on that. Alright, I have been streaming for about an hour and 15 minutes. I know that doesn't sound like very long, especially when my friend Octavian's over there streaming for over a week straight. But this was, I think, a good first day back to my own stream. And it was very fun. I had a lot of good conversation, and I was glad I was able to have that. Thank you, Happy Betty, for coming in and talking and lurking, and everyone else that stopped in and said hello. Grumpy's Gus, Zero Fear, talking about some AEW, which I can't wait to get back into watching. As soon as Octavian is no longer on stream, we will be able to do such a thing. I'm looking forward to that. So I'm going to start streaming every Tuesday from at least 11 to 1 Pacific Standard Time. I might go longer than that on when I really get into the groove. But I want to start with at least 2 hours every week until I get back into the groove. I am also going to start back up a show called Dale Norton and Friends. It used to be a drinking stream where I invite friends on. We talk about LARP, nerd stuff, what's going on in our lives, and have some beers or drinks or whatever they would like, and then talk, chat, and have a good time. And I'm going to be doing that again every month, I hope. This month it's going to be on the 16th. Have some friends joining me. I may create another drinking game. I am not sure. But the one I was doing has gotten a little stale. And then I will try to do that every month. And if you'd like, check out the Discord. I post my times there. And it's honestly not very active, but I also don't have very many people on there. But I do check it on a daily basis. So I appreciate everyone that stopped by, and I hope to chat with you all later.